Today we continue through the book of Hebrews, chapters 9 and 10, for day 353 of the Daily Bread Bible Study, Friday, December 18th, 2020. Here in Hebrews chapter 9, the writer takes time to describe the differences between the earthly and the heavenly sanctuaries. The earthly sanctuary contains the holy place with its objects and the place called the Holy of Holies. I find two things about this description interesting. First, the writer describes the functioning of the temple as if the audience is unaware of what's inside the temple. This makes me think that his audience is in part Gentiles, and he's imagining that this is not only a letter to the, quote, Hebrews. Second, the references to this present time and, quote, as long as the first tent is still standing in verse 8 of chapter 9, seems to indicate that this destruction of the second Jewish temple has not yet occurred. If this document was written in the late 60s AD, then the letter to the Hebrews is very timely, as it is almost 10 years before the destruction of the second Jewish temple by the Romans in 70 AD. So, written in the 60s, comes in 70 AD. That's incredible timing, and it also would have increased the validity of the writer's points and the validity of the Christian movement as a whole. So God's timing is everything. Speaking to his points, the writer continues to state that the high priest Jesus' offering of himself does far more than any animal sacrifice. In Hebrews 9, chapter 9, verse 11, but when Christ came as a high priest of the good things that have come, then through the great and perfect tent, not made with human hands, that is, not of the creation, he entered once for all into the holy place, not with the blood of goats and calves, but with his own blood, thus obtaining eternal redemption. For if the blood of goats and bulls, with the sprinkling of the ashes of a heifer, sanctifies those who have been defiled so that their flesh is purified, how much more will the blood of Christ, who through the eternal Spirit offered himself without blemish to God, purify the conscience of the dead works to worship the living God? For this reason, he is the mediator of a new covenant, so that those who are called may receive the promised eternal life, because of a death has occurred that redeems them from the transgressions under the first covenant. Moving on to chapter 10, this eternal life and redemption from sin, it applies for all time. On the contrary, the sacrifices made under the law function only until another sin occurs. In Hebrews 10, verse 11, and every priest stands day after day at his service, offering again and again the same sacrifices that can never take away sins. But when Christ had offered for all time a single sacrifice for sins, quote, he sat down at the right hand of God, and since then has been waiting, quote, until his enemies would be made a footstool for his feet. For by a single offering he has perfected for all time those who are sanctified. So the connection is again made to Jeremiah 31, as we had last time, in which sins would no longer be remembered. There in Hebrews chapter 10, verse 17, he also adds, quote, I will remember their sins and their lawless deeds no more. Where therefore is forgiveness of these, there is no longer any offering for sin. In this full confidence of faith assured, the writer states in Hebrews 10:23, let us hold fast to the confession of our hope without wavering, for he who has promised is faithful. The encouragement is that persistence in faith will grant a great reward, namely eternal life through the eternal covenant in Jesus. The writer of Hebrews believed that that day of the Lord was coming soon, May we continue with persistence and faith as we await whatever God has in store for us. Thank you for continuing with me in the Daily Bread Bible study. I hope to journey towards the end of the Bible here, coming up in day 354 next time.